Hey there, welcome back. In today's lesson, we're going to continue our discussion of Athens and Sparta and look at the Persian Wars. So let's go ahead and make sure you're in your interactive notebook and follow along. All right, so we're on page 4 of your interactive notebook, and we're talking about the Persian Wars. Let's look at first our essential question for today, which is, what were the major battles of the Persian Wars and how did they influence Greek history? So we're going to talk about not every single battle, but the big ones, and then we're also going to look at what's the outcome of this war. Because again, remember, these are going to be wars where Greece basically comes together to fight somebody else, which is the Empire of Persia. Let's start off talking about how this war came to be in the standpoint of, let's say, technology. We have a new type of army that emerges during this time period because of a technological revolution, we'll call it. Prior to this age, or prior to the Dorian Age, weapons were made of bronze, which was very expensive. That meant that only the rich elite could afford to serve in the army. After this time period, though, bronze goes away, and we see that iron becomes the predominant material of choice for weapons. It's cheaper and easier to produce, so that means that armor and weapons are cheaper and easier to produce. This leads to soldiers of all different social classes being able to serve in the army. So we have a new type of army, our foot soldiers. Can't talk today, guys. Our foot soldiers are called hoplites, and they form, as you can see in the picture in the bottom right-hand corner, this new thing called a phalanx. It's feared by all because it was very effective, and it's basically, as you can see in the picture, a formation of soldiers using very long spears and shields for protection. They move together as a whole unit, and it was very effective. So this is used throughout the Persian War and in later times. Our first major battle becomes known as the Battle of Marathon because it took place in the city of Marathon. So the Persian Wars are ultimately, they are the Empire of Greece versus the Persian Empire, which began in the territory known as Ionia at the time. If you look at our map on the right-hand side, Ionia is basically like current-day Turkey. So by 490 BCE, Persian ships sailed across the Aegean Sea and tried to invade Greece. The leader at the time was Darius the Great, and he brought 25,000 soldiers to the coast of Greece. So the city-states of Greece had to band together, and that's going to be a theme that we see in the Persian Wars. Remember, we talked before with our city-states that a lot of them were just kind of isolated. They didn't really work together. This is going to be one of the first times they all have to come together to fight off somebody else. So Athens sends 10,000 troops in response, and they are ultimately able to defeat the Persians at the city of Marathon. Now, Marathon, you might be thinking, I've heard of a marathon. That's like that thing that you do, and it's like really, really long. If you had Mrs. Bench last year, you know, she runs them all the time. But that's where we get the name marathon. And here's the story of how a marathon, the running, got its name. So after the Battle of Marathon, a gentleman by the name of, let's try and pronounce this, Phidippides, he ran 26 miles back to Athens. So the distance from Marathon to Athens was 26 miles. He runs back as fast as he can to basically say, 1, we won, hooray, and 2, they might be coming towards Athens next, so we need to prepare to defend the city. Unfortunately, this guy dies like on the spot. Like it literally gets out of his mouth and he's like dead. Guess he didn't train for his marathon. Get it? So a marathon, if you know anything about them, it's 26.2 miles. Marathon, that's where it gets its name. So unfortunately, he perished, but it was very important that he got that message because the Persians were going to turn next to Athens. So the Battle of Marathon is huge. It's a huge win for the Greeks. Then we have basically the war kind of goes to a stall. Darius the Great is out of the picture. About 10 years later, at 480 BCE, Darius the Great's son, Xerxes, renews this effort of the Persian War. So it takes about 10 years. He brings in this huge force for fighting, and the Greeks at this time, over that 10-year period, had basically divided themselves up again. That united front had kind of disappeared. And some Greeks actually thought like, if he comes in and takes over, it might not be that bad. So some of the Greeks actually joined on his side. And that's going to play a major role in something we're going to talk about in a second. But there's a huge battle at Thermopylae. Xerxes meets basically not too much resistance throughout Greece until he gets to Thermopylae. This is basically where there was a small, narrow pass that blocked almost 7,000 Greeks, including the 300 famous Spartans. They fought for almost 3 straight days until they were betrayed. So again, like I said, some of those Greeks had joined in with Xerxes. This was one of those ones. Unfortunately for those Spartans, they fought tooth and nail, but those Spartans, they're able to hold while the rest of people retreat. But unfortunately, those 300 Spartans die. So if you ever saw the movie 300, We Are Sparta. That's the story of these guys. So if you haven't seen it, check out that film. I haven't seen it, but I heard it's pretty graphic. But that is the story of this. So those 300 Spartans are able to, again, they perish, but they're able to save the rest by holding off that pass at Thermopylae. Finally, let's talk about Salamis. Salamis is when the Athenians decide to face Persia at the sea. Basically, Athens had the strongest navy at this time period, and Xerxes goes in. He wants to fight by land because he's stronger there. He burns Athens to the ground, and he sends his fleet of ships to basically finish the job. But he is unsuccessful because the Athenians are able to sink off about a third of his fleet, and then the Spartans finish the job at Plataea. After this, the Greek city-states form a huge alliance of about 140 city-states, and they call it the Delian League. They basically join together in order to ward off any other attacks from the Persian armies that are to come in later years. None of them are as big as what they've seen before, but it's just a kind of banding together just in case. So what comes with the aftermath of this war? We're going to see that there's a new self-confidence in Greece. No longer did they kind of see themselves as Greeks. They saw themselves as Greece as a united front. We're going to see that Athens takes a forefront here. They are going to head up that Delian League that also grows to 200 city-states. And they are going to use their military force to control the different members of the Delian League. They move the headquarters of it to Athens, and they essentially becomes the Athenian Empire. Athens sets itself up pretty nicely. And it also sets the stage for this golden age that's going to be coming out of Greece, where we're going to see lots of art and architecture, philosophers, logic, thinking, you name it. We're going to see it in our next episode. So again, the Persian Wars had some lasting impacts. As we talked about here, it does set up Greece to kind of become one of the biggest empires. And we're going to talk more about their golden age in the next episode. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.